Welcome back to the History Fix. This time we're going to talk about technological change. But before I get there, I want to digress a bit and just say a little bit about how I think history works. I think it works in terms of three motors or engines. And a couple of them we were talking about last time when we were thinking about the state. One is the struggle between classes, the struggle between the haves and the have-nots, the oppressor and the oppressed, the exploiter and the exploited. Another of them is the competition between rival elites, and I talked about the politico-military competition, as I called it, between rival ancient empires. Both of these are big drivers of the historical process, but there is a third one, and that's the one I want to focus on this time, which is technological change. Technology is an interesting thing in the sense that once human beings have come up with a good idea and it gets embedded in the thinking and the practice of ordinary people, it doesn't get lost. In other words, there's a process over time where knowledge, science, understanding, technique, skill tends to accumulate, and human beings become progressively better at producing the things that they need to live a good life. Let's now apply that idea to the development of technology in prehistory and the ancient world, with a particular focus on the significance of the introduction of iron. If we go back to the very beginning, then people are using flint tools or stone tools. That goes right back, maybe as long as 5 million years. And actually it's still the case that the great majority of people, when they set out to do a job of work, if we look at what's happening as recently as 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, they're still predominantly using tools of stone or tools of wood or bone or some other material which doesn't survive so well in the archaeological record, so we tend to know less about it. That's why we talk about the Stone Age. We talk about the old Stone Age, when people were basically hunters and gatherers, and we talk about the new Stone Age, or the Neolithic, which is the time of the agricultural revolution, and the first farmers were the earliest farmers about 10,000 years ago, they were using predominantly stone tools and some wood and some bone, but they certainly weren't using any metals. We don't really see the introduction of metal working into human society until we get to about 5,000 years ago, with the introduction of bronze working technology. Now, bronze is, and we actually use the term the Bronze Age, which is a bit misleading because it gives the impression that suddenly everybody is putting down their stone tools and starting to use metal tools, but it wasn't like that. The problem with bronze, which is essentially an alloy of copper and tin, is that the two components that you need to make it are fairly rare. That makes it quite expensive, and also it's a rather soft alloy. So although a lot of people were using bronze once it had been developed for armour, for weaponry, for ornaments, it wasn't really something which is being used on an everyday basis. Farmers weren't re-equipping themselves with bronze tools. We don't see a real transformation until the development of iron technology. Now, that comes later. It begins round about 1000 BC, so this is a good 2,000 years after the introduction of bronze working technology before we get iron working technology. And the reason is this: iron is very abundant in the landscape. There are sources of iron ore all over the place. The problem is that you need to get your ore to a very, very high temperature indeed in order to smelt it, in order to extract the metal from the ore. And it wasn't until people were able to build furnaces with bellows driving air into the furnace to bring the ore to a very high temperature indeed that it was possible to begin smelting iron. Once they had mastered this technology, it's absolutely transformative because iron is so abundant, and the result is you make weapons and tools which are exceptionally hard compared with bronze. Now, that has a major impact on all aspects of human experience. It has an impact on agriculture, industry, war, and indeed the very structure of society. Let me take those in turn. The impact of the Iron Age revolution, if you like, on agriculture. Just imagine how difficult it would have been to have cleared a forest or drained a marsh using tools only of stone and wood and bone, and compare that with farmers equipped to clear the land, to drain the land, to work the land, equipped with iron agricultural tools. Think about those great monuments that you see on archaeological sites, those great Greek temples, for example, or Roman bathhouses, and imagine how difficult it would have been to have constructed great monuments like that, to have quarried the stone, transported the stone, erected the monuments, carved the decoration and so on, if you had not been equipped with tools of a hard metal like iron. Think about warfare and how a soft metal like bronze gives you a sword which is prone to bend and dent, whereas a hard metal like iron gives you a sword which can chop and cut and go straight through armour, so that iron-equipped warriors would invariably have defeated bronze-equipped warriors. And then there's the impact on society. Bronze was very much an aristocratic artifact. It was so expensive that, generally speaking, it was only the better off who were able to afford weapons and ornaments of bronze. What a contrast with iron, where once the technology has been developed, you have a blacksmith pretty much in every village turning out iron tools, but not just that, also potentially turning out iron weapons, which means that in the Iron Age, ordinary people can acquire weapons, spears and swords with which they can take on the old Bronze Age aristocracies, the old Bronze Age elites. Think of bronze, if you like, as an aristocratic metal and iron as a democratic metal. Two great transformations follow this technological revolution. One is that there's a huge increase in the amount of surplus wealth being generated using this new technology, which means the empires of the Iron Age are much bigger, much richer, much more powerful. And what's also happening is that because of the availability of this technology right across the whole of society, there is an empowering of the common people and a wave of change driven by class struggle from below. We're going to explore some of that next time. We are facing the greatest crisis in the history of humanity. Capitalism is driving us towards climate catastrophe. To understand how we got here and how we get out of it, we really need to understand human history. What we're trying to do here at the History Fix is to give us the understanding of the past that we need to equip us to fight for a better future. If you like what we're doing, please share and subscribe, and also contribute to our Patreon page. Thanks very much.